Hello, this is a short video talking through an introduction to ringing touches of Stedman Triples. I'm Tom Hinks, I'm Lewisham District Training Officer, and this is for initially for students on a Rochester District KCACR course on the 11th of July, focused on ringing touches of Stedman Triples, but also just generally for anyone who's interested. So, yes, what we're going to do is just talk a relatively high theoretical level about how Stedman Triples works, so why it is the way that it is, and then use that as a springboard into thinking about um, bobs and singles, how to execute those well, and what they involve. Really, I think a useful phrase that I often use with my learners at Bromley is that in ringing, as in life, everything happens for a reason, and if we can understand why we have to do particular things when we're ringing particular methods, it can really help with keeping right and knowing what we're doing next. So this is the line for Stedman Triples that copied onto this PowerPoint slide. Hopefully, if you're attending this course on the 11th of July, the line and the work and the different components will be fairly familiar. So we've got double dodging in 4/5 and in 6/7, up and down. We've got the quick work going into lead right and back out again, and we've got the slow work, which you'll probably run in Stedman doubles as well. And those component parts of Stedman are the same in doubles, triples, caters, sinks, and upwards. There's a slow work, there's a quick work, and there's double dodging in 4/5. But why is there a slow work and why is there a quick work? Why do those different component parts exist? And the answer to that goes back to when Fabian Stedman was inventing Stedman way back in the 1600s. So ringing at that time was based really on plain hunting, on call changes and on plain hunting. And what Stedman did was he created a method that's based on partly on plain hunting on three bells. Um, and plain hunt on three bells is 6 changes long. And Stedman, the method, is made up of 2 blocks of 6 changes, of what's called a slow 6 and what is called a quick 6. And they're both plain hunt on on the front 3 bells, just starting in different ways. So a slow 6 starts with the bells in 1 and 2, doing a kind of point, so crossing and then going apart, and then the bell that's leading backstroke, handstroke, a bell making thirds and coming in. And a quick 6 is based on the bells in 1, 2, crossing over again, but then the bell that's gone into lead stays in lead, so it leads handstroke, backstroke. So in a quick 6, there are 3 lots of leading, and they're all handstroke, backstroke, handstroke, backstroke, handstroke, backstrokes. They're right place leading. And there are 2 lots of making thirds, which are made wrong, backstroke, handstroke, backstroke, handstroke. In a slow 6, the leading is wrong, backstroke, handstroke, backstroke, handstroke. There's 2 lots of that. And there are 3 lots of making thirds, which are made right, handstroke, backstroke, handstroke, backstroke, handstroke, backstroke. And what Stedman did was he created a method where there are alternating 6s. So there's a slow 6 followed by a quick 6, followed by a slow 6, followed by a quick 6. While these bells on the front are ringing plain hunt on 3, the bells in 4/5 and 6/7 are doing a double dodge, which also takes 6 changes. So there's the handstroke at the start, backstroke into the far place, handstroke dodge back, first dodge, backstroke into the far place, handstroke for the dodge, and then backstroke into the far place, and then you hunt away to the next dodging position. So it's a very clever method because it's just made up of these blocks of 6 changes of plain hunt on the front. Now, the reason why that is helpful is that at the start of a slow 6, the bell that's coming down from 4/5, so it's just done a double dodge in 4/5 down, at the start of a slow six, it makes thirds. So if we look at what the 4 is doing in this diagram of a slow six, makes thirds, goes down to lead wrong, does a point blow into seconds place, and that is the start of the slow work. And another bell is doing point in seconds, it's leading wrong, it's going up. This is the 2 on the diagram of the slow six. It's leading wrong, backstroke, handstroke, and then it's going up to make thirds, and then it's going to come out. And a third bell is sort of stuck in the middle of that, is doing a point lead, up to make thirds right, handstroke, backstroke, and down to a point lead. So those are 3 component parts of what would be familiar to us as the work of the slow work, right? The thirds go in, go down to your first whole turn. The half turns, point lead, thirds, point lead, and the last whole turn coming out. Then, in a quick six, the obvious bell just to highlight is the 6 in this diagram, which is coming in from 4-5, going down to lead and coming back out again. But we've also got 2 other bells. Those bells are in the middle of their slow work. The 4 is finishing off its first half turn in this diagram, going up to thirds, and it's going to come down and do the half turns, the point leads and thirds. And the 3 in this diagram is going up to thirds. It's just done these point leads, these half turns, and it's going to then come down to lead right, which is the start of the last whole turn. Now, the reason why that is actually a very helpful thing to know, and you don't have to be seeing that all the time or hearing that happening or anything like that, but the reason why that's a very helpful thing to know is that it helps us to understand why we're sometimes going in slow and sometimes going in quick. It's because when we're going in slow, a slow six is being run on the front, and when we're going in quick, that's because a quick six is being run on the front. So if we look at how that all fits together, we can see here in this sort of extended diagram where the red line is the division between the sixes, we can see how that's fitting together. So we've got a slow six at the top, and we've got bells double dodging in 4-5 and 6-7. Then we have a quick six. The 6 is coming in quick. You can track, if you pause the video for a moment, you can track through the line and just look at what the 4's doing. It's come in slow, it's doing its whole turn, going up to thirds, it's doing its half turns, and so on. And we can see the 6 coming in, as I say. We can see the 3 is doing its half turns, then its last whole turn doing thirds and out, and so on. And we can also see the bells above that in 4-5 and 6-7 moving on to new dodging positions above each 6. So Stedman is made up of alternating blocks of slow sixes and quick sixes, and knowing that can help us a lot with the problem of I'm in 4-5 down. Oh, which way am I supposed to go in? Am I going in slow? Am I going in quick? Having a bit of, in the back of our head, theoretical knowledge of the fact that the way I'm going in depends on what sort of six it is. Is it a slow six or a quick six when I'm coming in? Can really help, because whatever six it is when we go in is determined by what type of six has just been run. So after a slow six, there's got to be a quick six. After a quick six, there's got to be a slow six, and so on. So if we're in 4-5 down, we hear or can see, and this is really hard, but it's a useful thing to practice when you're sitting it out and watching. If we can see or hear that the bells on the front are leading handstroke, backstroke, leading right, that means there's a quick six happening underneath us when we're in 4-5 down, which would mean the next six, when we're going into the front, we're going to go in slow. Okay, and that's kind of like a backup method, which we'll talk about in a moment, rather than the primary method of knowing which way to go in, which is to remember. But it's a useful backup method nonetheless. And again, I've just thought I'd show the slow work just as another illustration of how this breaks down. So these, the diagram on the right, you can see the blue line for the 4, and those black lines running across are the divisions between the 6s. So at the end of each six, back bells in 4, 5, 6, 7 move on to a new dodging position. A new bell comes in to the front work, to the front three, and a bell comes out from there and goes up to 4, 5. Okay. We can see here, this is just from the start of the playing course, but we can see those divisions of the sixes. So the first six here, when the four's coming in, is a slow six. Then we have a quick six, six is coming in quick. Then we have a slow six, seven's coming in slow, three goes out slow. Then we have a quick six, five is coming in quick. Then a slow six, treble's coming in slow, four ends up going out slow at the end of that slow work. After five, six is on the front, three slow ones, slow, quick, slow, quick, slow, and out it comes. In a quick six, if you go in quick, you're on the front for one six, it's just going in and out. And if we think about the total of those, we've got six sixes where you're on the front, and then you have 8 sixes where you're not in a playing course of Stedman, but there were 6 sixes where you're on the front and ringing that kind of plain hunt work on the front three. Okay. And that, as we said, is the quick work, is about going in quick and coming back out again. Okay, now let's look at how that's a useful thing for this specific problem, knowing which way to go in. Now, the first and slightly trite way of knowing which way to go in is to not forget which way you came out. Because if you come out slow, you have got to go in quick next time. If we just think about that for a moment, there's a very good reason for that, to do with the alternating of the slow and the quick sixes. Just try to kind of puzzle that through in the back of your mind. Why is it that if you come out slow and you're into 4, 5 up, 6, 7 up, 6, 7 down, 4, 5 down, so that's 4 sixes away from the front, why you have to go in quick next time if you've come out slow, and vice versa. It's to do with the number of sixes you're away from the front, but have a think about that. The other ways of knowing which way to go in are to watch what the bell that's hunting down in front of you does. So your course bell is the bell that you're double dodging 6, 7 up with on the back. They then go down to 4, 5 down, and you double dodge 4, 5 down, and then they're going to go into the front when you're dodging 4, 5 down. If you can see that they're going in slow, that means next time you've got to go in quick. If you see they've gone right down to the front to go in quick, that means you've got to go in slow. That links to the idea of listening to what is happening on the front, or trying to watch what's happening on the front. Is the leading right? It's a quick six, you've got to go in slow. Or is it wrong? It's a slow six, you've got to go in quick. It also is the reason why the tip for Stedman in the Ringing World Diary, which I won't read out in full, but is effectively look for the bell that you strike over at backstroke in fourths place on your first blow in fourths on your way down. If you meet that bell again when you are striking at backstroke, at the end of that process, then something's gone wrong, or something like that. It's not quite that. It's if you strike over them and then you see them when you're going in the front at hand stroke. Sorry, when you're going into the front, then you have to go in slow, I think, or something like that. But yeah, you can read that one for yourself, but it's based on the alternating sixes, and that was poorly explained, but never mind. There's the foot method. So you put your right foot forward if you're going to go in slow next time. You put your left foot forward if you're going to go in quick next time. That has the disadvantage of being quite difficult to execute and being quite easily confusing. And then the crunch method, which is to go in quick, and if there's a crunch, that means you should have gone in slow. So lead an extra blow at hand stroke and then start ringing the slow work. But the key ones are not forgetting which way you came out, and trying to watch what's happening on the front are the most useful ones. Now, this is where, when we come on to bobs and singles, that this information starts to become very useful. The first thing to know about bobs and singles is that they take effect at the beginning of a new six. So the call is made, somebody says bob or single, at the second of the double dodges, the second hand stroke dodge, at the end of a six, so it's the third hand stroke of the six, and then it takes effect at the hand stroke at the beginning of the next six. In a bob, that involves one bell making fifths instead. So this is the one in the diagram of the bob. Instead of going up to the back, so instead of double dodging 6, 7 up, it's making the bob, making fifths, and then double dodging 6, 7 down. And then the bells on the back carry on dodging because of that. Remember, everything in ringing happens for a reason. Because of the fifths that's made by the bell making the bob, the bells on the back have to keep dodging, keeps sort of stay together on the back. The seventh in this diagram can't come down because the one's in the way. It's made the bob. So it has to take a step back instead. Effectively, that means that after that call is made, those bells do 3 more dodges together. But a useful way to think about it is there's one dodge for the bob. The call is only happening at that hand stroke at the beginning of the sixth. There's one dodge for the bob, and then there's a further 2 more dodges, which are what those bells would do anyway if those are the 2 bells that are in 6, 7. There's always a double dodge in 6, 7, but you start with one dodge for the bob, and then you're doing 2 more. That's how I would do it. You might prefer counting to 3 and counting 3 dodges. It's entirely up to you. Now, most of the time, most ringing of Stedman triples mostly involves bobs. The reason for that is that Stedman, as a triples method, gets its name, the triples part, from the fact that every change is what's called a triple change. There are 3 pairs, or a trio, 3 pairs of bells that are changing places, and one bell that's making a place. And in when Stedman as a method was invented back in the 1600s, and then in the 1700s and 1800s and 1900s, for most of the history of Stedman being run, purists very strongly felt that triples should involve triple changes as much as possible and avoid, as far as possible, having not a full set of triple changes. And if we look at what a single involves, where there's a bell making fifths, a bell making sixths, and a bell making sevenths, that means that there's only 2 pairs of bells that are swapping over, a double pair of bells. And it's not, therefore, pure triple changes, if that makes sense. And until very recently, it was thought that you couldn't ring a peal of Stedman triples without having some singles. But composers spent years and years trying to reduce the number of singles to as few as possible, and they got it down to 2 in a whole peal length. Now we know that there are bobs-only compositions where there aren't any singles, but they are quite complicated with a lot of calls in quite random orders. The upshot of that is just a very practical one, which is that you are more likely to spend more time ringing bobs than you are ringing singles when you ring Stedman triples. You can ring whole quarter peals, which are just bobs, without having to ever worry about making sixths at a single. However, in shorter touches, singles are quite common as a way of getting lots of musical changes into a short space of time. But general note, you're more likely to be ringing a bob than a single. Now, let's look at the specific bits of work of what bobs and singles involve. So in a bob, there are 3 things. There's making the bob, which we talked about, making fifths after doing 4, 5 up. There's your double dodging 6, 7 down. You do 3 more dodges, or 1 for the bob and then 2 more. Double dodging 6, 7 up. You do 3 more dodges, 1 for the bob and 2 more. And those dodges are all in the same direction. So if you are double dodging up, you keep dodging up. If you're double dodging down, you keep dodging down. And then singles, we have the same making the bob work, so a bell making fifths, and that's exactly the same as in a bob. So if you're in 4, 5 up and somebody says something, whether it's bob or single, you do the same thing, you make fifths. If you're double dodging 6, 7 down at a single, you make sixths, and then start double dodging 6-7 up. That's actually quite hard because you end up dodging with the same bell but the other way round. So let's say you were on the 6 and you're with the 7. You are double dodging down with the 7, so you're over them at handstroke, under at back. You make a single, then suddenly you're over them at backstroke and you're dodging under them at handstroke. So it can be a bit confusing from a rope sight point of view, but it's useful to know and to remember that you're with the same bell. You're also striking over the same bell in fifths, but at a different stroke, so at handstroke rather than backstroke after a single, because that bell that was double dodging 4-5 up is then double dodging 4-5 down. And if you're double dodging 6-7 up, you actually are unaffected, so you lie behind as you would do if there wasn't a call, if there's a single. But then same kind of rope sight problem, you're double dodging over the same bell, but just at a different stroke. So it's a potential confusion there. But those are the basic pieces of work of what you're doing. Now, there's then a rule about what you do next, or what you do eventually when you get away from the back. If you made the bob at a bob or a single, or you made sixths at a single, or you lie behind unaffected by a single, you go into the front work the way you would have expected to go into the front work if you had not been affected. So if you come out quick, and then you're in 4-5 up and there's a bob or a single, and you make fifths, you make the bob or the single, make fifths, and then you're double dodging 4-5 down, and you'd come out quick, like I came out quick, so then you go in slow. You go in the way you would expect to do if there hadn't been a call. And same with 6-7 down, and there's a single. It'll keep you at the back for longer, but you will end up going in the way you would have expected. And if you lie behind unaffected by a single, it's the same. There is a reason for that, but we'll come back to that a bit later on. So any single or making the bob is a low stress part of ringing touches, relatively speaking. If you're in 6-7 up or down at a bob, then each bob that affects you in 6-7 up or 6-7 down will change the way you go into the front work. So if you came out quick and you are affected by one bob on the back in 6-7 up, and that's it. So you do your extra 3 dodges, 1 for the bob, 2 more. Then you lie behind, then you sit in your double dodge 6-7 down, there's no further bob, you go down to 4-5, you'd come out quick, you go down to 4-5, you don't go in slow, like you would have expected to. Instead, you go in quick, the opposite way to the way you would have expected. If they carry on calling bobs, affecting you on the back, each bob changes the way you will go onto the front. Now, sometimes the conductor might tell the band before a quarter or a touch that the touch they're going to call, or the quarter or the peal, is what's called a twin bob composition. And that means that the bobs always come in pairs or fours, or sometimes in blocks of 6, but they always come in even numbers, which means that you would always go in the way you would expect to, because there's an even number of bobs. However, other touches, which are more complex, you might have like 3 bobs on 6-7 up, then a single, then a couple of bobs on 6-7 down, and it's quite easy to lose track of what you're meant to be doing. So getting into a discipline and a habit of going, okay, that was a bob, I was going in slow, now I'm going in quick. There's another bob, okay, back to going in slow. There's another bob, back to going in quick, and so on, is helpful. That's where some people like the foot method, because you shuffle your feet around every time there's a bob. But as I said, that method is a bit fallible. But you have all those options to fall back on about watching your core spell, watching what's going on the front, listening to what's going on the front, following the rule tip for Stedman in the Ring World Diary that I couldn't remember and didn't explain very well, but you can read it yourself, or those sorts of things, or the crunch method indeed, if you needed to. Watching where the ringer of the bell in seconds place looks, are they looking at you or are they looking at the tenor? Those kinds of things. Okay, so just a final thing to think about. Why does being affected by a bob in 6-7 change the way you will go in? So we've seen how Stedman is made up of sixes, alternating between quick and slow sixes. We've seen how bells at the beginning of a new six, the handstroke of a new six, a bell goes into the front, a bell comes out of the front work, whether that's slow or quick. Bells in 4, 5, and 6, 7 move on to new dodging positions at that handstroke and then do a double dodge over the 6 changes of plain hunt that are happening on the front. We've also seen how bobs on the back keep you on the back for longer. Right? They keep you on the back because you're continuing to dodge in the same position that you were dodging before. So let's just have a look at this diagram to try and work out why it is that if you make the bob, it doesn't change the way you go in, but if you're affected by a bob on the back, it does. And the reason for that is to do with the types of sixes that are happening. So let's just look at the treble here. So the blue line's on the treble. It's come out quick. It's gone to 4, 5 up. It's double dodging 4, 5 up. Below it is a slow six. So a slow six is happening below that bell because it's just come out quick. Then there's a bob. The bell would make the bob, make fifths at the bob. And then below that bell, there's a quick six happening because the previous, the 4, 5 up six was slow. The six where the treble was on the front was a quick six. So we've had a quick six, we've had a slow six, 4, 5 up, made the bob, 4, 5 down. Now we're back onto a quick six. In effect, the treble has jumped past those two sets of double dodging on the back, 6, 7 up and 6, 7 down, and jumped down to 4, 5 down. Instead, missing out those two sixes on the back. There's a quick six happening beneath it, therefore it goes in slow. If we look at what's happening in a plain course, if that bell had been unaffected, 4, 5 up, slow 6, 6, 7 up, quick 6, 4, 5 down, slow 6, 6, 7 down, slow 6, sorry, 4, 5 down, quick 6, into the front, slow 6. So if you're away from the front for an even number of sixes, whether that's 2, as in made the bob, or ring Stedman doubles, or 4, as in plain course up to the back, back down, or 6, there's been 2 bobs on the back, or 8, there's been 4 bobs on the back, or 10, there's been 6 bobs on the back. If it's an even number of bobs, then you're going to go in the way you would expect because of that alternating 6 structure. It came out quick, there's a slow 6, quick 6. It's a slow 6, right? So after an even number of 6s, when you're going in, it's going to be the opposite 6 to the one you came out. If you're affected by one bob, that keeps you on the back for 1 extra 6. So you're away from the front for an odd number of 6s, for like 5 6s. So let's think about that. 4, 5 up, there's a slow 6 happening. 6, 7 up, there's a quick 6 happening. 6, 7 down, there's a slow 6 happening. Bob, 6, 7 down again, there's a quick 6 happening. Go down to 4, 5, there's a slow 6 happening, and then you're going in and you go in quick. So the reason why I made that fuss at the start about slow and quick 6s, and the reason I said everything in ringing happens for a reason, is that understanding in a theoretical sense about those two different types of 6s helps you to understand why it is that an odd number of bobs on the back will make you go in the opposite way to the one you would expect, i.e. the way you came out, you go back in that same way. Whereas an even number of bobs on the back will mean you go in the way you would have expected to. You came out slow, you go in quick. You came out quick, you go in slow. And that is a very sort of theoretical run through of how bobs work. They take place at the start of a new 6. They're called at the handstroke at the end of the previous 6. Bobs on the back. Each bob changes the way that you would go in. But in total, an odd number of bobs will mean you go in the opposite to the way you would expect, and an even number means you go in the way you would have expected to go in. Singles do not change the way you go in at all, neither does making the bob. And we talked a little bit about some of the rope sight issues that singles create and Bob's, you're with the same bell, so it's not, and in the same way, so it's not quite so hard. Looking forward to talking that through in person in Rochester District on the 11th of July. Any questions, do feel free to reach out in the meantime. Thanks very much for your time watching this long ramble about Stedman, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye for now.